For a different perspective, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's a major Hillary Clinton supporter. He's the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, you received that letter today from the FBI Director, James Comey. Did that letter do enough to reassure you? What was your reaction when you got that letter?
Well, my reaction was that this is not very surprising at all. I think the director made it pretty clear in July when he said that a prosecutor would move forward, that there was no evidence of intent, as you were pointing out. And I think many of us believed fully that they wouldn't find any evidence of intent in these emails. If anything, they would probably find duplicates. And so not a surprising finding, surprising only that this was found 2 days before the election. And I think it underscores the original mistake, the very serious error in judgment of releasing the first letter over a week ago, because had the FBI taken the time to go through these emails and not made that public a week ago, right before the election, there wouldn't be the necessity of this follow-up step. And so you had a number of people voting in this interim period without that information and with that innuendo hanging out there. So I think that was a disservice, but nonetheless, not a big surprise, only perhaps a surprise in the timing.
He had promised Congress in his sworn testimony after he released the original conclusion back in July if there were a new development to review new information, he would inform Congress. And from his perspective, Congressman, he was simply living up to that promise he made to Congress when at the end of October 28th, he released that letter. What was wrong with that?
Well, first of all, the footage that I've seen, the director said that if there were new evidence that came to light, he would review that evidence. I don't remember seeing him go beyond that in his testimony. If he did, that was a mistake.
There was an exchange he had with some Republican members saying, I will take that into consideration, when they said, will you come back and let us know? He sort of indicated that he would.
Well, if he did indicate that he would, that was a mistake. And when he started sending investigative files to Congress, I said that was a mistake. I said what you're calling transparency will come to be known by a different name, and that is mistake. Because you don't release this kind of information before an election. You don't, in fact, talk about pending or closed cases. And while I understood the exceptional circumstances surrounding the July statement, I think to go beyond that injected the Bureau into this presidential campaign in a way that was very destructive, not just to a candidate in the unfair treatment of that candidate, but destructive to the Bureau by making the Bureau an issue. And I think this whole chapter, this whole episode, will be reviewed by directors in the future by the Department of Justice as sort of an abject lesson in what goes wrong when you violate these DOJ policies. So in my view, Wolf, that letter should have never gone out. In fact, the prior information files that were sent to Congress should not have been provided either. That was antithetical to DOJ policy as well. And that is what has led us to this rather extraordinary 48-hour in advance of the election announcement. Nonetheless, as I mentioned, not surprising. I would hope it will lead the Trump campaign to pull down those horribly distorting ads they've been airing, suggesting all kinds of things based on nothing more than innuendo and their wishes. But do I have faith they'll do so? Not in terms of the conduct they've run this campaign.
What do you say to what we just heard from Sean Spicer, the Republican National Committee, that Hillary Clinton has herself to blame, that she created this private email server, there was classified information on the server, it was clearly mishandled. The FBI director said she was grossly negligent, if you will. She didn't handle that email, even though he recommended against criminal charges, that she herself is to blame, and Sean Spicer says she was engaged in gross negligence.
Well, look, the Secretary has admitted a long time ago that it was a mistake for her to set up out of convenience a separate email account that she used for both work and for private. She wasn't the first Secretary of State to do that. Colin Powell did it as well, but nonetheless, it was a mistake. But it was not Secretary Clinton's mistake to inject in the campaign in the last 2 weeks. That was the FBI's mistake. The FBI decided as long ago as July that there was no prosecutor to bring charges here. And having been a prosecutor for 6 years, that conclusion made a lot of sense. You don't go forward where you can't prove there was some intent to do wrong, and there's never been any evidence of that. So the case should have been closed at that point. If there were new information that came to light, that could be reviewed. but that's not something that you share publicly when you don't know what you have. And as we later learned at the time of the director's announcement last week, he hadn't even reviewed the emails. Had they taken the time to do that, I don't think we would have ever had this final chapter that we had that has so embroiled the FBI in this campaign.
Very quickly, should Comey resign?
Look, all I'm prepared to say is I think this was a very bad judgment by the director, and at this point I'm going to leave it at that. But I hope we will learn from this. I hope the Bureau will learn from this. It not only was, I think, a mistake to inject this into the race, but we've had that mistake unfortunately compounded, Wolf, by endless leaks before and more significantly after that letter was published, and that really needs to be looked into too. That statement from Mr. Giuliani that he had advance notice of this, the pride in which he took of that in talking to other Bureau agents apparently, that I think is among the most appalling, that you might have people at the Bureau sharing inside information with one of the campaigns in a way that really brings discredit upon the Bureau.
Yeah, all right, we'll leave it on that note. Giuliani, by the way, told me on Friday he did not have advance notice, but we'll continue this conversation. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.